it's never been a better time to be rich. According to a new report, the 1% is doing fantastic, better than they ever have been before. Now, this is according to a new report released by the Economic Policy Institute. And there's a lot of data here, which is both fascinating / infuriating. Now, let me give you some details in this report. Apparently, salaries for the top 1% had grown nearly 4 times the rate of those at the bottom 90% of earners. This is, this is since the Great Recession, okay? So now the average wage for the top 1% of income earners hit $719,000 per year in 2017, up 3.7% on the year, exceeding their peak of $716,000 per year just before the Great Recession. Now the average wage for the top 0.1% reached $2.7 million in 2017, the second highest level ever, just 4% below their level in 2007. However, wages for the 0.1% rose 8% on the year in 2017. So, look, I know I just threw a lot of numbers at you, but basically it's saying that rich people are doing fantastic while you're not. Now, that same report does also say that the bottom 20% of Americans have no money saved up. So, why do they have money saved up? Is it because they're irresponsible? No, it's because they don't have money to save. Wages are stagnant. Now here's more from that report. Income inequality has soared over the U.S. In the U.S. over the past 5 decades, despite increases in worker productivity. Now there's a separate report that also said incomes for most Americans have been stagnant for the last 40 years. Instead, this increase in income inequality was almost entirely driven by soaring compensation levels for the top 1%. Average wage growth for most working Americans continues to flatline in 2018, according to the EPI. Some of this real wage stagnation can be explained by an uptick in energy prices, but even the underlying pace of nominal wage growth has yet to pick up in the way it historically has as labor markets tightened. Now, that's important, right? Because here's the big lie about Republican tax cuts, right? So, hey, man, here's what we're going to do. We're going to cut taxes for the rich. That's going to spur economic growth, and then your wages are going to go up. Well, we cut taxes for the rich, and there really wasn't a whole lot of growth. I mean, there has been the normal amount of economic growth since Obama basically righted the ship after the Great Recession. We've been growing very, very steadily. Now, Republicans said, oh, here we're going to cut taxes for the rich, and that's going to supercharge growth. Has it? No, it has not. And so we're continuing to grow at the same amount we did under the Obama administration, slightly less, to be honest with you. And still, wages are flat. That's it. I mean, pretty much, look, this should be more evidence that trickle-down economics is nothing but bullshit. It is basically more for the rich and less for you. So, look, that explains why Republicans aren't running on the tax cuts, by the way. Now, more disastrous data. For most U.S. workers, real wages have barely budged in decades, according to a Pew Research Center report in August. They said on the face of it, these should be heady times for American workers. U.S. unemployment is as low as it's been in nearly 2 decades. In fact, despite some ups and downs over the past several decades, today's real average wage, after accounting for inflation, has about the same purchasing power it did 40 years ago. And so that's what we've seen. Wage stagnation and with continued tax cuts for the rich. This isn't the first time we've cut taxes for rich people on the promise that it will grow the economy and increase wages. Did it during the Bush years. We had gigantic tax cuts for the rich. And guess what? Didn't happen. Why? Because it won't happen. That's not how it works. Look, when people in the middle class have more money, then that's what grows the economy. Now, the middle class barely got anything from this tax cut. It's nearly imperceptible, the effect that this tax cut has had. In fact, look, families earning $25,000 or less will now save an average of $60 in their federal taxes this year, thanks to the Trump tax cuts. And those making between $48,000 and $86,000 will save a total of $930. That's over a year. That's not very much per paycheck. And since the price of everything continues to rise, including energy, that really hasn't made much of a difference. In fact, a lot of those gains, supposed gains, have been eaten up by other expenses. Now contrast that for the rich. According to the Urban Brookings Tax Policy Center, families in the top 1% are now saving an average of $51,140. They get a tax cut of $50,000. You get a tax cut of $930. I think it's pretty obvious. Look, most of the gains, 83% of the gains of these tax cuts went to the richest Americans. That's not an accident. That's not a, oh, oops, we didn't mean to cut taxes for the rich too. I mean, I guess it's just what happened. No, this was a calculated effort. In fact, Donald Trump earlier accidentally let it slip, where he's like, oh, now we're going to look at cutting taxes for the middle class. But wait a minute. This was touted as a middle class tax cut, which of course it wasn't. But now they're coming out and saying, oh, yeah, that one, no, that was for the rich. This next one, this will be for you. When in reality, of course, it's going to be the same thing. It's going to be for the rich. Because it's always for the rich. Because that's what the donors pay for. The donors pay the politicians, and the politicians cut their taxes. That's what's going on here. And as far as the corporate taxes go, we cut it from 35% down to 21%. You know what happened? Didn't create more jobs. Didn't boost wages. No. As a result of these tax cuts, the stock buybacks are now expected to reach $1 trillion by the end of this year. That's money that they took from the savings on their taxes that went right back into the executives' pockets. They buy their stock, they inflate their stock prices, and then they cash out. And they laugh all the way to the bank to everybody that says, oh no, don't worry, it'll help us too. It'll trickle down. It's not going to trickle down. It's never going to trickle down. You were robbed. That's the con. And they're going to continue to try to con us every time. Because that's all the Republicans can run on, other than fear. They're not looking out for you. They are looking out for themselves and their donors.